You're gonna sit there and tell me that this is the first game on a new gen console for Pokemon, and Shinx isn't present at all? Game Freak, have we lost the plot? Iono this, Canary that. I don't care. What is Tarragon's address? Hey, what's good, Joe? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So, if it wasn't clear, I have, at this point in time, beaten Pokemon Legends ZA. I have so many things to say about this title. It is absurd. Naturally, of course, I want to be as thorough as I can, which is why I'm doing a second playthrough so that I can get all of the details that I need for a proper review. But obviously, before we get to that point, because who knows how long that'll be, I want to give my immediate afterthoughts. But before I do that, I think Future Soul has something to say. Hey, I know y'all love you some Pokemon, which is why I have to imagine you guys are looking for other monster catcher RPGs to scratch that itch in one way or another. Which is why I want your eyes in the direction of ELESTRALS Awakened. From the passionate mind of A-Drive and his team comes a 2.5D monster catcher that takes inspiration from Greek mythology. As a recent fan of Epic, I'm for sure intrigued, and I know you Percy Jackson fans are too. You will play as a caster and set out on a journey to bond with one of 8 elemental spirits to be challenged by the world of ELESTRALS through tough battles against the divines like familiar faces like Zeus or Poseidon, or exploration through puzzles and uniquely designed dungeons and temples so you can get treasure. Not only does it have the classic RPG style that we all know and love, but it also has bullet hell boss battles. Yeah, as a Broforce fan, I'm here for this. This game has a really unique evolution system called Nexusing. Use spirit points to ascend your Celestial to new heights so that you can take on anything that might even attempt to rival you. The game is in development as we speak, and I promise you do not want to miss your chance to back this project while the Kickstarter is currently live. Supporting it now gives you the best chance to obtain alpha and beta access to the game, exclusive in-game unlocks, exclusive Kickstarter promo packs with add-ons, and potentially even the possibility of becoming an NPC or an in-game caster. Make sure to use my link in the description so you don't miss out on your chance to support these extremely talented individuals on this passionate and clearly inspired project. I know I can't wait. Alright, Past Soul, back to you. Well, that was something. We'll talk more about that later. But I think it's about time we go ahead and get to the meat of things, no? It's about lunchtime, right? Why don't you go ahead and have a cold one? I've got some extra Flaffy juice that I wrung out. Why don't you go ahead, take a sip of that, and let's go ahead and talk about all the things that I was right and wrong about in regards to Legends ZA. The first thing I think that I was right about was the fact that this is, by and far, the most controversial Pokemon game to date. I think it's more than fair of me to say that I absolutely called this one. Don't get me wrong, outside of like Legends Arceus, most new Pokemon games usually have the community extremely divided. But this is a different level. So far, to my understanding, there have been 2 major sides of this discussion. Or, you know, let's just call it what it is. Argument. There's one side that thinks that Pokemon as a franchise needs to die and suffer, and that everyone supporting it either deserves better or needs to fall alongside it, fully believes that this is the worst game ever concocted by mankind, and that everybody that spent money on it deserves to watch their grandmother get promptly knocked out flat by Mike Tyson. Or there are those that are actually playing the game for themselves and having a decent time with it. I have seen so many different streams, talked to a bunch of different people. A lot of my friends have the game. I've obviously played the game, and anybody that has actually played the game for themselves are generally having a pretty damn good time with it. Now, of course, as somebody that's played through it, I don't think that the game is absolutely flawless or anything like that. I'll save those opinions for the real videos that deserve it, like the review, but it's just so very interesting to see this like major divide. It also doesn't help that the most recent Digimon game that was in development for like 7 to 8 years also came out like a month prior and is receiving very high praise. Rightfully so, of course. It looks like a very good game. But of course, with Pokemon as like the major centerpiece pillar that it is when it comes to monster catching RPGs, there was no chance in hell it wasn't gonna get compared to this game. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and argue with one side or the other. How you feel about this game is completely subjective. How you spend your money and your time based on what you've seen and what you enjoy or don't enjoy is completely up to you, and I can't stop you from that. That's totally fine. And so far, I haven't had a direct problem with this or anything like that, but cursing people out because they're enjoying a game that you don't think you would like is kind of ridiculous. I've seen it a good couple of times now through multiple streams, through multiple comments on other people's videos and stuff like that, but thankfully the community over here is very tame. Thank you guys for being so reasonable. But generally speaking, it's okay for somebody to like a game that you don't, and it's also very likely that they can recognize the flaws probably more so than you because they've actually played the game. So let them experience it the way they want to experience it. It's okay if you don't want the game, and it's okay if they do. Simple as that. Now we're gonna go ahead and delve into the actual game in of itself and some of its mechanics. So minor spoiler warning just in case you haven't gotten to a decent point in the game or possibly finished it. So be wary going forward. I was definitely right on the fact that this game was going to have the best customization we have seen in a mainline Pokemon game by and far, and it is not close. It only makes sense that the sequel to the game that introduced customization and cosmetics to begin with gave us a full circle situation and improved on every aspect of it. Okay, maybe not every single individual aspect, of course. I feel like we have less facial options than we did than Scarlet and Violet, weirdly enough. But for the most part, I think that it's more than safe to say that this is some of the most freedom that we have ever had when being able to customize a character in a Pokemon game. Just the simple fact that none of the clothing is gender locked puts this game above the rest in terms of customization by a wide margin. Again, this is something we have to go more in depth on later. This could get its own entire video if we're completely honest, but if it wasn't obvious, for me personally, I think this is generally a net positive. The next one, and this one might be just a little bit more opinionated, the new battle system turning out to be very fun and hella engaging. Like I've said a million times over by now, RPGs are absolutely my favorite genre. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. However, how those RPGs are delivered to me can definitely make a little bit of an impact. I absolutely adore turn-based RPGs. Pokemon was the first game I ever played and grew up on, so of course I love turn-based RPGs. And I find it kind of admirable that even they notice that sometimes doing the exact same thing over and over again could get a little stale, so throughout the years, especially since the transition to 3D, they have found ways to make turn-based battles a little more spunky, whether it's through adding gimmicks or something else. But turning Pokemon into an actual action RPG is everything I could have asked for, especially when it takes even a semblance of inspiration from Xenoblade, because this is literally how Xenoblade operates. Unless you're Persona or Expedition 33, 9 times out of 10, it's pretty damned hard to get somebody into turn-based RPGs. But if you give them something like this, which is just naturally a little bit more engaging, and you might have something. Take every potential strategy that you know about Pokemon and speed it up by like 11. This instantly takes any meta you possibly know of or could think of and flips it pretty much on its head, because everything operates so differently now that you kind of have to change up how you think about certain Pokemon. You're thinking more about general speed and what kind of priority moves could get out attacks faster. You're thinking about the big clunky Pokemon and thinking about how you could utilize those as tanks on the field. Instead of thinking of what turn you should use Detect or Protect or whatever, you're thinking about how you should time it instead. You're thinking about this franchise very differently now because of this battle system, and I couldn't be happier because this is where I live. But I feel like I was generally pretty right, and I'm very happy to see that a lot of people seem to agree and are having a very fun time with this new battle system. And now we have a fun little online mode that we can utilize it in. So even if it's not the general competitive standard that we're used to, it's nice. It's nice to have, you know? And that kind of segues into my next point, which is the fact that we have an online mode that, again, challenges the general Pokemon knowledge, flips it on its head, and gives us something very different. We'll talk more in depth about it in future videos and stuff like that, but generally speaking, while I do think that it can use some major tweaks to how it operates, I feel like the general idea is very good. It is generally impossible to have that perfect, absolute, unstoppable team of 3 that nobody can do anything about. Somebody on the field is always going to have an answer to one of your 3 Pokemon. Always. But it always has you thinking constantly, what if I use this Pokemon? Do I actually need to have a Mega on my team? What if I had an item instead? What moves would work with this Mega Evolution? It's a lot, but it's fun to have a lot. It's good to have those options, in my personal opinion. I like it. Spoiler alert though, I think that mode is a little too generous. I got the Greninjite in like 20 minutes, but generally speaking, the concept is there. And if we're gonna have it for a while, especially before we get Gen 10 in like a year or two, yeah, I think it could use some tweaks. The next thing that I think I was generally right about, now this one could definitely be debated on, you know, how you absorb the content, but the game's length. The general idea that I had seen floating around was essentially that because this game took place solely specifically in Lumio City, that this would not be that long of a game and it would be kind of expensive for a really short game. I figured that was not going to be the case, and I feel like I'm still kind of right here. There's a lot you could do in this city. If you're not doing side quests, you're doing parkour challenges for colorful screws. If you're not doing that, you're making sure that you're 100%ing each of the wild zones, which essentially multiplies the more you progress in the story. You're constantly doing research tasks, some of which require you to sit on benches, take pictures with your Pokemon, or go to cafes. I figured that it would all be related to capturing and battling Pokemon, but no, Mabel set us up with some stuff. That's crazy. Again, not flawless, but we'll get to that. But I distinctly remember somebody saying that I was kind of nuts for thinking that you could get 40 to 60 hours out of this game. But like, yeah, you absolutely could. There are people that I'm watching that are streaming the game as we speak, doing subathons, and they're up to their like 40th, 50th hour on this game. It is insane. Yeah, you could definitely get that much, probably well more. But again, kind of expected. This is a Pokemon game, right? But what I'm saying is the content provided gives more than you would probably expect from a game that takes place solely in one city, is all I'm getting at. Perfect execution, debatable, but they definitely did that. They did something. And the last thing that I feel I was right about. This one, I feel like a lot of you may disagree with me on, but I think, very generally speaking, it definitely was a step above Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus in a good couple of ways. One of the primary things that I've seen from the discourse that I was talking about earlier was this idea that Game Freak doesn't know how to develop games, they're not capable, yada this, yada that. One thing that the people from the outside don't really seem to truly understand about Pokemon is that, you know, yes, while Game Freak and Pokemon Company are really behind the times when it comes to these games, there's really no arguing that, they have ideas and concepts that they do try to execute better and better each time if they can help it. Scarlet and Violet felt like such a heavy step back because, again, it was in development at the same time as Legends Arceus. Therefore, there were so many fun and unique and cool ideas that were introduced in Legends Arceus that didn't really get to see the light of day in Scarlet and Violet because they didn't have time to really try and implement those ideas. Legends ZA, for the most part, tries to take what Legends Arceus introduced and takes that another step further. And that is all I can ask for. I know a lot of people are in hysterics about the graphics and things like that, but it's still a step above Legends Arceus, let's be so real. And miles above Scarlet and Violet. I know we're looking at the same game here, come on. And even if we do have a smaller pool of Pokemon, I'm totally okay with that considering the fact that animations actually have improved a lot. We're seeing things that we haven't seen these Pokemon do before in-game, like taking your bag and actually running away with it, or high-fiving you. Not to mention all their movement animations when they're following you, or how many different expressions they can utilize when you're in the camera. Not that Legends and Scarlet and Violet didn't do this, but definitely not to this degree. This was something I definitely slightly anticipated. I didn't think it would be much of an improvement, but it definitely was more than I expected, and I'm pretty happy about that. Now, why don't we go ahead, flip the coin real quick, and talk about the things that I was absolutely wrong about. I made a lot of predictions and guesses about certain gameplay elements and mechanics that I figured were pretty much a shoo-in. And you know, I can't say I'm surprised that these things didn't happen, but I'm still a little surprised, especially since I feel like these elements would have elevated the game to a much higher level for a lot of people, but we'll talk about it. For example, I thought we were gonna get very specific Naveen side quests when it came to like fashion related stuff. I mean, granted, don't get it twisted, there are side quests that are very directly related to the customization, but they're not given to you by Naveen. Or at the very least, the ones I've done aren't from Naveen. I haven't done every single side quest. There might be one out there still like late game that I missed, but for the most part, Naveen's not the one giving you all of your fashion stuff, which is fine. You know, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Lumio City is littered with a bunch of shops that have plenty of options for people. I just figured that the fashion-based character would have a little more fashion-based development and quests for us to do. Not the biggest deal in the world or anything like that. I absolutely adore Naveen as a character, would love to see more of him down the line, but I just found it interesting that we didn't delve a little more into that route or that idea, right? After that, I was insanely wrong about how Mega Evolution was gonna work. I was completely under the impression that it would be beneficial for you to keep like your entire team just filled to the brim with Pokemon that can specifically Mega Evolve, but that couldn't be farther from the case. My initial idea was that it would be a good strategy for you to have multiple Pokemon that can Mega Evolve so that when you're battling something big or for a long enough period of time, you could have multiple Pokemon Mega Evolve so that you could swap out between each of them during the battle so that you could have a better chance of survival. You can't even do that. In proper and sensible fashion, you can only still Mega Evolve one Pokemon at a time. You can still use plus moves on the other Pokemon, but you can't Mega Evolve other Pokemon back to back to back like that. You still have to work to fill up the bar, and even then, you're only utilizing one Mega Evo at a time until that timer runs out. In hindsight, completely my fault, G. I don't even know why I thought that would be a thing. It shouldn't have ever even been a thought. And honestly, it wouldn't have worked well anyway. It would have been way too much. Another presumption and prediction that I had was the idea that we were gonna go throughout the game, like building up the hotel in some sort of fashion. Somebody had commented this idea and I thought this is a for sure shoe-in situation. Like, there's no way we don't go about this game capturing Pokemon and doing side quests that would specifically lead Pokemon and even people to take residence at Hotel Z so that we could clean it up, build it up, and make it look like an actual living, thriving hotel. Now, I'm only slightly disappointed by the fact that we didn't do this because while it would really fit with the theming that's going on in this game, in retrospect to the actual story that's going on, I don't think it would have worked well at all. Not if we wanted to have a satisfying conclusion, anyway. And I think for the most part we did, or at least I think we did. But overall, we didn't do that, and I can honestly live with that. Not the biggest deal in the world, honestly. Next thing that I was super wrong about was the idea that we were going to be locked in on doing raid battles all the time. Raid battles are specifically story locked, so that's not a thing. And part of me is kind of like weird about it because on one hand, like it makes sense that we didn't have that because it would be so easy to get overpowered and just abuse that system to get a bunch of Mega Stones and stuff like that, maybe to sell or whatever, I don't know. It wouldn't have worked out well overall. But on the opposite hand, we had that for the last two mainline generational titles with Generation 8 and Generation 9. So what was stopping them from doing that here, you know? I just love a nice simple way to grind, a very straightforward way to go about it. But, you know, again, in hindsight, there is a very easy way to grind. It's just doing the battle zones. Like, you're just doing the battle zones at night over and over and leveling up your Pokemon like absolutely crazily. It's not that serious, especially when you have the Canary plushes that boost you. So it's like, we didn't really need raid battles at all, honestly, but I don't know. I like the idea of like grinding out candies the traditional way because I've been used to that for the last like decade pretty much. But I made the assumption and that made an ass out of you and me. Mostly you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And then my last primary thing that came to mind was the idea that we were going to be fighting in more buildings. Now, don't get it wrong. We do actually go inside a lot of buildings. We're fighting inside restaurants. We're fighting inside the Rust Syndicate. We have an entire area dedicated to a tournament at some point. We have an entire area that's like a callback. I'm not even going to say that out loud because I think it's still too early for a lot of people. That place was really cool. We did go inside a sewer system, albeit a little smaller than I anticipated, but it's there, you know, and we have multiple variations of it. So, you know, it's something, but it's simply just not to the degree that I thought it was going to be, which, I mean, whatever. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but I could change my mind about that in the review. I'll have to sit on it a little more. I'm still doing my second playthrough right now, so we'll see how I feel about it once I've gone through it again to see how I really feel about that aspect, because that one's kind of important. But other than that, I think that just about does it for the most part of the things that I was like really wrong about in regards to Pokemon Legends ZA. Spoiler alert, I like this game enough to start a fresh playthrough, literally not even a full 24 hours after finishing the main game. Like, this game is fun, man. This game is a lot of fun. But oh my god, there are so many things that we still need to cover in regards to this game. So we're going to talk about a lot of that soon. I do have another video planned out for you guys, heavily dedicated to a certain aspect about Legends EA that we need to talk about, and then a couple more after that before we get to the official review. So give me time on the review. That one will come out eventually. You know, but give it some time. Let's let everybody cool down. Let's let everybody finish up the game first, and then we'll talk about it in depth, fully, right? So we'll get to that when we get to that. As much as I thoroughly enjoy it, though, I don't know if I feel like this game is masterclass yet. It definitely is missing and just not thoroughly utilizing every aspect that it could be, and that could be unfortunate in some aspects, but in other aspects, it works more than expected. But we'll talk about that later because, hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. I'm going to go ahead and skedaddle right the hell on because I got a lot of videos to make for you guys. So that being said, I'm passing the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me what you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you feel like you were right or wrong about a lot of aspects when you assumed what this game was going to be about, what it was going to contain? Do you feel like my list was a little relatable? You felt like maybe some of the things here you were also expecting, or maybe you were not expecting, or you didn't see anything in this list at all as reasonable whatsoever? I was completely off base. I was completely off mark. I never would have made any of these land. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always down there with you guys. But with that being said, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time.